Hello everyone, welcome to Diplomatic Briefing. On June 28, large-scale protests broke out in Belgrade, the capital of Serbia. Protesters demanded the dissolution of parliament and early elections, and clashed with the police. Earlier that day, Serbian President Vučić vowed to defend the country, reiterated that the protests were incited by foreign forces, and warned activists not to resort to violence. According to AFP, this protest is the largest in several months. It coincides with Serbia's Vidovdan, the anniversary of the 1389 Battle of Kosovo between the Ottomans and the Serbs. Serbian police estimated that the number of participants reached 36,000. However, the independent protest monitoring group Public Assembly Archive stated that the crowd was about 140,000 strong. Reports said that, unlike previous peaceful gatherings, this time protesters clashed with riot police. During several clashes, police fired tear gas and stun grenades, while protesters threw flares at the officers. Police later arrested dozens of protesters. Before the protest on the 28th began, organizers issued an ultimatum to Vučić, demanding that he announce elections by 9 p.m. local time. However, Vučić rejected this demand well before the deadline. He has repeatedly stated that the protests are a conspiracy by foreign forces attempting to overthrow the local government. Under Vučić's leadership, Serbia can be seen as an alternative model of development in Europe. As a small country, it must balance the contradictions between Russia and the US and Europe, while also striving to carve out a space for survival between China and the West. Because he has opened the doors and is willing to cooperate with China, with collaboration spanning from the economy and infrastructure to even boldly purchasing weapons and equipment. Although EU politicians look down on Vučić and do not agree with his political stance, it turns out that recently Serbia has become the go-to for help among European businesses. China has implemented rare earth controls in line with international practices. Even though the approval process has sped up, some Western countries are still complaining bitterly. Meanwhile, Serbia, which maintains good relations with China, is full of confidence and has even become the go-to for help among European car manufacturers. According to a Bloomberg report, Serbian President Vučić revealed on June 29 that China has promised Serbia to speed up the export of key minerals needed for electric vehicle production. This will benefit car manufacturers like Stellantis that have set up factories in Serbia. Vučić told reporters in Belgrade that Stellantis has been facing increasingly serious difficulties in obtaining key raw materials. After seeking help from the government, the Serbian government intervened and leveraged its close relationship with China to coordinate efforts. The Chinese side has promised to support and speed up the approval process. Vučić said that Stellantis produces models such as the Fiat Panda and Citroën C3 in Serbia. When it became impossible to obtain the necessary materials at normal prices, the company asked the Serbian government to communicate with the Chinese side. Vučić showed the reply from the Chinese side and said that China has already instructed the relevant agencies to maintain close communication with the Serbian side and to speed up the completion of the necessary export permit procedures. Vučić also emphasized that the Chinese side told him that any export restrictions are not aimed at friendly countries like Serbia. He did not specify whether these materials are limited to use only at Stellantis factory in Serbia, or if they can be allocated to the company's other factories elsewhere. Vučić said that in 2012, when Stellantis was still operating independently, its Krgujevac plant in Serbia began producing cars, and this company has played a vital role in Serbia's industrial output and economic growth. Stellantis Group is the world's fourth largest automaker, formed in January 2021 by the merger of France's PSA Group, Peugeot Citroën, and Italy America's Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, FCA, with its headquarters in Amsterdam, Netherlands. Of course, the report also takes a subtle jab at China, pointing out that China has tightened export controls on certain rare earths and raw materials widely used in manufacturing, putting pressure on global supply chains. In early June, the European Association of Automotive Suppliers expressed concern, stating that since April, out of the hundreds of license applications submitted to China, only about a quarter have been approved, and many European parts factories and production lines have already been forced to shut down. If no solution is found, it is expected that within 3 to 4 weeks, more production lines will be shut down. Reuters reported on the 27th that European suppliers have now obtained enough licenses, thus avoiding the large-scale production disruptions that had been predicted earlier in June. The pace of issuing licenses from the Chinese side is accelerating, but there are still some Western companies that can be said to be pushing their luck, lamenting about a so-called rare earth shortage, continuously hyping up the so-called weaponization of rare earths, and criticizing China's establishment of a rare earth export licensing system. They complain that the magnets they receive are barely enough, some applications are rejected, and the future supply situation is hard to predict. On June 26, He Yadong, spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, stated China has always attached great importance to maintaining stability and security of global supply chains. In accordance with laws and regulations, China is continuously accelerating review of export license applications related to rare earths, has approved compliant applications, and will strengthen the approval process. China is willing to strengthen communication and dialogue on export controls with relevant countries, and actively promote facilitation of compliant applications. Regulated trade, To put it simply, first of all, the EU's schizophrenic tendencies are once again evident in their dealings with Vučić. On one hand, they want to overthrow his leadership, supporting the opposition in organizing large-scale violent protests and undermining the stability of Serbia. On the other hand, European car companies want to use Vučić to help China expedite the approval of rare earth exports. To put it bluntly, it's like they want to take you down while also asking for your help. It's hard to explain this phenomenon as anything other than schizophrenia. Secondly, by revealing this information at the press conference, Vučić is indirectly telling EU politicians, "Don't try to destroy me. If you do, your companies will lose the bridge that allows you to communicate effectively with China." Third, this rare earth shortage in Europe is no joke. You could say that if China so much as coughs, the entire global rare earth supply chain immediately comes running. For decades, China has built a triple moat around its rare earth industry: patents, scale, and cost, holding a vast amount of intellectual property in rare earth refining, achieving large-scale production, and driving down costs. For the US and Europe to rebuild a complete rare earth supply chain, it's not just a matter of time, they also need to master core technologies, achieve large-scale production, and be mentally prepared to operate at a loss for a long period. The investment payback period is extremely long, and there's no guarantee of seeing any promising returns. In addition, after Trump launched the tariff war against China, not only were traditional American exports like soybeans, corn, and natural gas severely impacted, but Japanese media also found that American ginseng growers were on the verge of collapse. An article in Nikkei Asian Review on June 29 pointed out that, according to data from the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection, Wisconsin is the largest producer of American ginseng in the United States, accounting for 98% of the country's total ginseng output, and China is one of its biggest buyers. Overseas buyers usually start purchasing at the beginning of the year, but due to the US-China trade friction, shipments to China came to a standstill after April. Fluctuating tariff policies and restrictions have plunged global trade into deep uncertainty. Ginseng growers in Marathon County, Wisconsin, are bearing the brunt of the trade war, as prices remain persistently low and last year's harvest is still piling up in warehouses. Growers say that the amount of leftover roots from last year's harvest is unusually high because most buyers have postponed their purchases, waiting for the final outcome of tariff policies. One of the ginseng farmers, Will, sighed. "How are you supposed to plant when you have no idea what the market will be like?" He said he has already planned to reduce the acreage of ginseng he will plant next season. Mainland China and Hong Kong have always been the top two export markets for American ginseng. Last year, the United States exported a total of $32.5 million worth of American ginseng to these two regions, accounting for 83% of the global export value of this product. Agricultural products are one of the largest categories of U.S. exports to China. Since the trade dispute broke out during the first Trump administration, the market share of U.S. agricultural products in China has been steadily declining. Many farmers worry that this round of trade disputes could drive them into bankruptcy. Mr. Jiang, a Chinese-American ginseng farmer in Marathon County, Wisconsin, pointed out that American ginseng takes at least 3 to 4 years to mature before it can be harvested. Many growers have chosen to quit due to low commodity prices and high investment costs. On top of that, the physical labor required to run a farm and the unbalanced work-life situation have made farming unattractive to many young Americans. Mr. Jiang's company now connects local farmers with buyers in China. He once owned several acres of American ginseng fields, but began downsizing in 2018. 3 years later, he stopped growing ginseng on his own and shifted to partnering with another local farmer, sharing the harvest. Last year's harvest season saw a 10 to 15% drop in wholesale exports, and the price of American ginseng also declined. Mr. Jiang attributes this to the Trump effect. He says, "Business hates uncertainty, and this is one of those cases. You just never know what he's going to do." Besides the Chinese market, Mr. Jiang has also turned his attention to the domestic U.S. market, targeting the Asian American community. But he says, we're facing tariffs, geopolitical tensions, and even retail customers are dwindling. In the past 2 years, the American ginseng market has shrunk by 25%. Ultimately, our survival depends on 2 factors, the weather and China. The conclusion is, don't think that if the U.S. launches a tariff war against China, America will win unilaterally. Now, it's becoming clear that there are many American products that only have a market in China. If Chinese people don't buy them, there's no one else to sell to. American ginseng is a good example of this.